we're going to put a little bit of a wrinkle into it. And it was actually rather interesting the way that we are doing this wrinkle, right? So we're going to employ a couple of other draft strategies that are out there as well, right? So you guys may have heard of some of these, you may have not have, and it's okay if you have or haven't. But we're going to each kind of take one of these strategies, and we're going to showcase how to maybe try and bring that thing through with a complete roster employing those strategies. So we had Kevin. He's going to be picking out of the 104. And believe it or not, the guy that's been pounding the table since the day this podcast has begun, saying running back early, running back often, running back all the time, is actually going to be a running back zero strategy on this draft. So really that means that he's not going to be able to pick a running back in the first 2 rounds of this draft. We're going to see if he can make it through it. It'll be an interesting ride, I'm sure. Alex is going to be picking out of the 105, and he is going to be taking a best player available approach throughout the draft, just kind of playing whatever falls to him. And then I'm going to be picking at the 111, and I'm going to be taking a running back heavy strategy myself. So guys, this should be rather interesting, and we'll get into this. Any thoughts before we begin?
Yeah, before we get started, there was a part, like, this was done intentionally. We had to give Kevin the zero running back strategy because he is a running back centric drafter in the first place. You guys gave me the option of take no running backs, or actually you gave me the option of all 3. And I went with what I'm most comfortable with, and that is take the best player available. So I'm handcuffed here for the first couple rounds of just take the best player available, which is great. There's no choosing.
So I'm the one who got put out of their comfort zone, huh?
Yes. We put Kevin out of the comfort zone because Derek is also a running back centric drafter as well. So
it's not really uncommon.
Torture Kevin in this exercise.
It's all good. We'll be able to speak to it, and some guys really like this approach, and we're gonna work through this. And I do think as we get into it, if you're going zero RB, just visualizing how drafts typically unfold and runs of players, it's actually better to do it earlier in the draft, as far as drafting from like 1 through 5, as opposed to drafting at the back end, because it's all about that 3rd round pick, right? It's all about where the tier breaks are. And we'll get into that as we dive into this mock draft. But I want you guys to keep that in the back of your head. We just got done talking about tier breaks. We're going to go through and start this mock, but there's a reason why a zero RB approach can work if you're drafting in the the top half of a redraft league.
Alrighty, guys. So we got the draft starting there, and 101 is CMC, then 102 Saquon, then Zeke, and now Kevin's on the board with the 4th pick. Kevin, which way you going?
Going with the approach of zero RB to show Alex I can still smoke any team that he puts together ever. We are going to start off with one Michael Thomas.
Alrighty, so Michael Thomas off the board. That puts Alex on the board with best player available strategy. Which way you going here?
Best player available is Dalvin Cook. Smash the draft button.
And then it was Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, CEH, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams goes. Now I'm on the board, and I've got the running back heavy approach here. Now, looking at some of the tier breaks, some of that type of stuff that we were talking about there earlier, Miles Sanders shows that he's the best available running back there. For those of you that have listened to me, you know that that's not necessarily my cup of tea when it comes to that. So I am going to take a guy named Joe Mixon, who actually is in my tier 2. The Miles would be in my tier 3. Miles Sanders goes directly after. Then you've got Kenyon Drake, which again puts me back on the clock. And I'm going to take the best available running back at this time, Nick Chubb. Julio goes, Tyreek goes, DeAndre Hopkins goes, Lamar goes, Aaron Jones goes, and now Alex, you're back on the clock. Best player available.
Best available here is Austin Eckler, but Patrick Mahomes is right behind. This is, just your standard league. since I am handcuffed for the first 2 rounds, I will go Austin Eckler here.
Coming back around and going the 0 RB approach. So we could either go Patrick Mahomes and get that best overall quarterback. I know Lamar went earlier in this draft, but Patrick Mahomes, according to our consensus, is going to be the best quarterback in the league for fantasy this year. Or we could switch around. I could go 2 wide receiver, pick up Godwin to go with Michael Thomas, and really have a leg up on pretty much everyone else in the league week in and week out. For the sake of argument and making this interesting, as much as it goes against what I talk about, I am going to go Patrick Mahomes and make things really interesting for people.
And then it was Kelsey, Gurley, David Johnson, Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, James Conner coming off the board. So, Kevin, that puts you back on the clock at the 304.
So now we're getting to the point where there's still some options out here. Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, if I'm really wanting to go receiver, running back. This is you're getting into different tiers. That we are now in tier 3 of running backs, guys. There is no doubt about it. Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon. There's a couple different approaches, or with what this draft has to offer. We are really going to double down on the 0 RB strategy here, and we're going to try and make this work. But we are going to select Kenny Golladay and see how that shakes out for us.
Oh, I really thought you were going to go George Kittle there. Oh, I thought you
the way he was going with that, I thought he was too.
Yeah, Michael
Alex,
Patrick Mahomes, Kenny Golladay, I thought for sure. George Kittle's best available, so I'm still sticking with best available, even though with my 2 running backs that I have, receiver would be a good idea here, but George Kittle basically is a receiver, so I'm going to go that route.
So then Chris Carson, Mike Evans comes off the board, Odell Beckham, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon. That puts me back on the clock. And so looking here, I could go a couple of different routes, even being that running back heavy guy, right? So starting to get into the 3rd round, you can start looking at some of these other things there. But there is a workhorse back on the board right now. And Le'Veon Bell is going to be the selection right here. Then Amari goes. Juju Smith-Schuster goes. That puts me back on the clock here in the 402. Now, there's 2 guys right here at the top of the 402 that I could go with and be extremely happy either way. Allen Robinson is here. DJ Moore is here. But I'm going to hold true because I got a little bit of a my guy here with DJ Moore. Very happy about that selection there. Then David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson comes off the board, A.J. Brown, and Alex, it's now back to you. And so far, your roster makeup is Dalvin, Austin, George Kittle.
Yeah, and so, you can kind of go best available right now is where I kind of wanted to look. Starting to get into the 4th round here. We're starting to see some receivers come off the board in this round. So I'm going to turn my attention to receiver. Just so happens that the best available receiver is Calvin Ridley. So I'm going to go that route and take Calvin Ridley.
This is where things start to get interesting when you go 0 RB, right? Do you chase down the rabbit hole? And here a couple different options, right? And here's why I'm going to chase down the rabbit hole is because I'm coming up at the end of another tier break with Singletary, Ingram, and Mostert being kind of the tail end of where tier 3 is for me. And I know there's 6 picks in between where this one, after this pick and before the next one. So I don't want to miss out on this tier and then chase at the beginning. I'm happy with how this is going. So where I'm going to go is I'm going to lean on Mark Ingram at this spot solely because I want a piece of Baltimore's offense, and I'm willing to take that with Mark Ingram. And honestly, I'm going to follow that up with Raheem Mostert because he's the last guy in my tier 3. You could argue Kareem Hunt for those of you who really want a piece of that. I still don't like Kareem Hunt in the 5th, guys. Like, I know Cleveland's going to use him, but I still don't like Kareem Hunt in the 5th. But based off of this team to start rounding things out, I can run with Raheem Mostert as my 2nd RB and get both of those guys in the same tier and be happy with it.
There you go. And then in between Mark Ingram and Raheem Mostert, Robert Woods, Zach Ertz, DJ Chark, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Devin Singletary all went off the board. And then Kevin picked up the Raheem Mostert in the 504. Alex, that puts you on the board right now with Cook, Eckler, Kittle, and Ridley as your team makeup to begin.
Yeah, and so again, I think, as I try to construct my roster, and really the strategy that I've always employed is get yourself a good set of starters before you start getting yourself backup players, bench players and stuff. I've always kind of employed that strategy. Take it for what it's worth. I've never won a league, but get yourself a good set of starters. So I'm looking again at I could either go, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, or Cam Akers, and then running back basically. But in that wide receiver slot, because I only have one right now, we need two. Keenan Allen is there. I'm pretty bullish on Keenan Allen this year, so I am going to take Keenan Allen here.
Then Tyler Lockett, T.Y. Hilton, Ronald Jones goes in the 5th, Stephon Diggs, Mark Andrews, and that brings that back to me. And this is one that's really kind of interesting there because it could have gone a couple of different ways. Normally, you would see Ronald Jones fall a little bit further down. So that was one I was actually expecting to fall back to me there. Kareem Hunt is still on the board if I want to go with running back there, as well as some rookies in there. Right now, you've got a couple of decent wide receivers out there. Quarterback wise, you still got just about everybody on the board with the exception of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. So this is one that knowing the tiers is definitely one that you need to be aware of because there's some definite tier breaks happening right now, right? With the running backs, you're into kind of the start of another tier. Right there. The wide receivers, you're at the very tail end of a tier. I do believe that Courtland Sutton is going to be a guy that is a very solid kind of guy, probably about a tier 3 with some upside. So that's where we're going to go here. Marquise Brown, Kareem Hunt come off the board. That puts me back on. You're kind of at the beginning of another tail or another break on tiers of wide receivers. You're still kind of in the middle of a running back tier. Tight end, you're at the beginning of a tier. So this is one that Kevin was talking about earlier in the episode, that you can be the guy that can really start a run and see where that kind of goes. Now, normally I would look at going later with a quarterback here, but there's a ton of value and there's still kind of that second tier quarterback right here. And that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to take the shot on Dak Prescott right here. I think he's going to have another very big year. Then Russell comes off, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, A.J. Green, Darren Waller.
Yeah, so I was kind of along your thought process there about looking at quarterback and seeing where we're at, and there's still plenty of good ones on the board, including Kyler and Deshaun Watson, who are obviously, I think, both, dual threat quarterbacks that can get you points in a lot of different ways. So I have 2 starting running backs. I have 2 starting wide receivers. I've got my starting tight end. I do need a flex spot, and I do need a defense. And I just think at this point with where we're at, I'm gonna get a quarterback with Kyler Murray still on the board. I'll take Kyler.
So looking at this pick, I know a lot of people are going to be jumping on Cam Akers right here. People can't get away from these rookie running backs. I'm so hesitant about all these rookies coming into the season that I'm going to go a different direction, and I'm going to lean on the most reliable New England Patriot on the roster right now, and that is James White.
Then Brandon Cooks comes, Cam Akers goes, Devontae Parker, Deshaun Watson, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, and it's back to you, Kevin. A little bit of a run happening.
A run here. Yeah, some quarterbacks are going.
Quarterback run has started, so we've kind of already beat that to the punch. I feel like I have some wiggle room all the way around here. Like I see some value that we could pick right at for receiver. Running back at the moment is kind of dried up. depending what your opinions are on Marlon Mack. But I think for now, what I'm coming down to is, do I want to go with one Michael Gallup, or do I want to go with a Jordan Howard? I think I've fallen away from the wide receivers far enough, and to kind of round everything out for starting depth or an extra flex position. And I think Michael Gallup is going to have a gangbusters year. So Michael Gallup is going to be my selection right here.
Oh,
That was a guy that when I was looking at it, I knew that I was going to gamble on that tier setup, and he's a guy that did not fall back to me. I was really hoping I'd be able to stack a Dak and a Gallup there between the 6th and the 7th.
I'm in a position where I find myself quite frequently, and I think everybody's kind of find themselves where they have their eye on a guy thinking, oh, he might fall to me. Michael Gallup was that guy in this round, really hoping that you would go with Julian Edelman or go in a different direction if you wanted to, go for a different position. So I'm a little torn up about that. I still need to fill a flex spot position. I do think Marlon Mack has some value this year. And with where we're at, I don't feel like this is too much of a reach. I think this is just right. So I'm going to go running back here again and kind of shore up my flex spot. I'm going to go Marlon Mack here.
And then Tom Brady, Gronk goes, Julian Edelman, Hayden Hurst, Jordan Howard. And that's very interesting because I was really expecting to be able to take Jordan Howard here at the 7-11 and Hayden Hurst at the 8:02. So, again, both of those kind of going before me there. So now it's looking to a point where you've got to make some decisions there and really understand what's out there, what's available. So when you look at like tight end right now, you've got Evan Ingram and Tyler Higbee are the two kind of best available out there. There's a definitive tier break between Evan Ingram, Tyler Higbee. So that's where I'm going to go with Evan Ingram, shore up that tight end. Then Tyler Boyd, Jarvis Landry goes back to me. And this is another one of those that you start looking at it and you start trying to see where some of these breaks are going to lie, and really could go with several different options there because the team makeup so far is not forcing my hand in any direction right now. So we're gonna take an upside kind of pick here with a guy and take one Mr. Will Fuller. Then Deontay Johnson, Aaron Rodgers, Tevin Coleman, Antonio Gibson, Matt Breida.
So I'm looking wide receiver here since I only have two currently on my roster. I'd like to fill that room out a little bit more, especially with some of the talent that's still out there, including a Deebo Samuel, a Marvin Jones Jr. from Detroit. But sitting there, and it might be a little bit of a reach, but I think I'm okay with it at this spot here in the 8th round because I think he's going to have I think his ADP is a little bit lower than what he should be given the circumstances. So I'm going to take Emmanuel Sanders here because I want a piece of that New Orleans offense, and I think that's a good piece of it.
There's a couple different things where I'm looking at right here. A lot of it is upside, seeing what I can do as we kind of round out this 8th round here and try and get the most bang for my buck. Deebo Samuel staring me right there in the face. It's too early to draft Deebo with him most likely being out for the first few games of the season. So I'm going to pass and let someone else try and mess around with their roster that way. He's not a guy that I'm looking to do. And so then it's how do I feel about Tariq Cohen? Do I feel like he's a guy who's going to continue to get a bunch of the passing work in a PPR setup? One Philip Lindsay, who now has to compete with carries with the Melvin Gordon, or Latavius Murray, who is a guy who does have standalone value outside of Alvin Kamara. And if Kamara were to go down, we have seen that Latavius Murray can kind of carry the load on his own and come into that lower level of RB1 territory. Honestly, guys, I don't love any of these picks right here. There's not a screaming value based off of how this draft has gone. So for the sake of argument at this spot. We are going to take a flyer here and go with Tariq Cohen, only because I like his receiving upside, and they got to throw the ball to somebody in Chicago.
And then Debo comes off the board directly after. Marvin Jones Jr., Philip Lindsay, Tyler Higbee, Sony Michel, Latavius Murray comes off the board. And then it's back to you, Kevin, for the 9th. And you've got 4 more picks on the board.
So for the 9th round, as we continue to kind of move some things around, this is a spot where now I've kind of gone through the tiers. I'm not dead set on anybody. I'm looking for value. I'm looking to see what's out there. And a guy who's sticking out to me here at the moment is Darius Slayton. He's a guy that I think the Giants have some things planned for him. I like his value right there. Again, it's not CeeDee Lamb. I don't like these rookie receivers. We've been through this. So Darius Slayton's going to be my guy here.
So basically, my plan here is we still have the one roster spot that I don't have filled is defense. I'll fill that in the final round. So basically, my strategy here, and this is going to be to my probably to my demise to exclaim this out loud while we're doing this exercise. But what I'm going to go for is kind of the same strategy that Kevin's going to go for, and that is value and finding guys that I'll be happy with plugging in if one of my guys goes down, or on the flip side, a handcuff that I'll be happy plugging in when somebody else's guy goes down, and we'll step into those spots. And those guys are going way later, so I'm not gonna go that route yet. But like I said, I wanted a piece of the Kansas City or the New Orleans offense. I'm gonna want a piece of that Kansas City offense as well. So I'm gonna go here. CeeDee Lamb still on the board. Henry Ruggs is still on the board. Staying away from rookies this year. Staying away from rookies in this draft just because, it's only 12 rounds, whatever. But I'm going to go Mecole Hardman here to make sure that I've got a piece of that Kansas City offense.
All righty. And then Hunter Henry comes off the board. Kerryon Johnson comes off the board. Carson Wentz. Alex, I was actually a little surprised you didn't go with Carson Wentz on that one. Josh Allen. All right, Josh Allen then goes, and then your handcuff to Dalvin Cook goes in the pick right before me. So that puts me on the board, and really team-wise, I've got, a ton of options there. So we're just going to be looking for kind of best player available, something that's going to fit an immediate need, something that we can get a ton of upside on. Or a ton of floor right here. Like that is kind of either one on who's going to stand out value wise. And looking at it, there's a few things there that you could do. I'm again not in love with the rookies. It's one of those that, maybe the 12th round I might throw a flyer on one of these guys, but right now there's not a ton of guys out there that I'm just going to be pounding the table for. But Christian Kirk down here in the 9th round is a guy that I can get. Should have a pretty good floor, but also has some upside with the ceiling there as well out there in Arizona. CeeDee Lamb goes the San Francisco 49ers. And then that puts me back on the clock. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a reach for my guy here, a guy that I've projected to be the top, finished 13 wide receiver overall. Preston Williams is going to be my 10th round pick. Then Zach Moss, Henry Ruggs, Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, the Baltimore defense. And now, Alex, you're back on the clock in the 10th.
Okay, so one of my guys that I was kind of targeting and hoping that he would come back to me in this round was Alexander Mattison, kind of to hope that I would have that handcuff to Dalvin Cook. So I'm a little upset about that. I'm probably going to be talking to that person after the draft is done to see what deals we can work out. And if I'm going to do that, I want to make sure that I have something to offer him. And I'm going to pick up another running back that, has some upside, but mostly is a really good handcuff. So I'm going to go Tony Pollard here.
So we got 3 rounds left for the sake of the mock purposes. I still need a tight end. I still need a defense. I'm kind of at the top of the next tier of tight end, so I'm not overly worried about that if I'm not dying to get my hands on one of these guys at the moment. I don't feel like I am. starting with the 0 RB approach, I feel like I need some extra depth to be able to shake around for some of these guys to see who the hot hand is on my roster. So to pick up some extra running back depth to kind of play the hot hand on my roster, see what I need to do. Really, it's coming down between Darrell Henderson Jr. and Boston Scott. And for this one, I'm actually going to go Boston Scott. I think he showed a lot in that Philadelphia offense at the end of the year, and he's a guy that I can feel comfortable with.
And then Jared Cook, Matt Stafford, Jalen Reagor, and then the defenses start with Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Chicago. Kevin, back to you in the 11th.
This is the run, right? This is the start of the tier 2 defenses. You had San Francisco and Baltimore kind of kick off tier 1 in a set of their own, and then the run of tier 2 defenses. If this is dealer's choice, right? Defenses get swapped out every year. You hardly ever pick a defense and sit on them for an entire season. There's a couple different things you could look at. I don't think New England's defense is going to do the same. They have too many guys opting out for the 2020 season. So New England's defense is off the table. The Chargers defense is always super intriguing talent-wise. They have a great defense. I don't like the fact that they have to play Kansas City twice a year on top of a Broncos and Raiders offenses, both trying to add a ton of speed to those defenses. They're going to be testing things. So I'm not necessarily sold at the defensive position, but at the same time, I can see that this run is going to continue. So I have to bite off here at the Kansas City defense and know I am just going to be streaming defenses from week to week.
So interesting, because I thought for sure you were going to go Tampa Bay's defense. So I'm a little relieved. Actually, I'm going to go the Tampa defense again for everything that Kevin said about the Patriots defense. They're the best available at this point. I had kind of decided that I was going to go defense in the final round, but seeing this string of defenses goes has gotten me a little nervous that I'm not going to get one of my 2 selections. So I'm going to go Tampa Bay defense here.
And then Darrell Henderson, the Patriots, TJ Hawkinson, the Vikings, the Saints defense. And that puts me on the clock here as well. And yeah, it's one that we could go one of 2 different ways with this one. One, we still need a defense. There's not a defense out here that's just screaming, pick me, ton of value there. It wouldn't hurt to put another running back on the roster here. And so it's one I could really go one of 2 different ways. I'm going to actually, bank on old Shady McCoy and see what he can do, see if he can make some magic happen down there in Tampa. It's just intriguing. So we're going to go there. Noah Fant goes off the board, then Cam Newton rounding out the start of the 12th. And so now I've kind of boxed myself in with having to take a defense here. And that being the case, I'm going to lean on the Seattle Seahawks defense. They're a run-first team, so we'll see what ends up shaking out there. Damian Harrison, Duke Johnson, Miami's defense, Justin Jefferson, Jerry Jeudy, and that puts you back on the clock, Alex.
I've got 3 running backs in a start 2. I've got 4 wideouts in a start 2. I've only got 1 tight end. That's a little concerning when it comes down to how my team is constructed a little bit. I'm looking at quarterback here. You know you're going to need another quarterback for the bye week. Obviously, I didn't really factor in bye week into any of this that we were doing. I don't know if any of us really did when it comes down to it. So looking at the quarterbacks available, there's still plenty of talent. Probably enough guys that would be out there free agent-wise that I would be okay dropping somebody to pick up. So I am going to look at the running backs. Not a lot going on there. Wide receiver, nobody's really jumping off the charts at me. So I'm going to pick up another tight end, a decent pass catcher that's going to be in hopefully a much improved offense. I'm going to go Austin Hooper here.
All right, guys. I'm pinned into tight end. I have to take a tight end to fill out my roster. And so now it's coming down to homework. What have you done? What have you like? That type of thing. Mike Gesicki is extremely intriguing sitting there in Miami. He had a great run the back half of the year. What scares me is their offensive coordinator in Miami. There are rumors that Gesicki is going to be lining up in the slot, and if that's the case, I really like Mike Gesicki here. And if not, then I'm going to be wasting a pick. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to punt further on down the line, but I'm going to go for Dallas Goedert, who I think is continuing to see more and more of the target shares. Zach Ertz is a little bit older, and quite frankly, Philly can't keep a wide receiver healthy.
All righty. And so then that's going to round out with Daniel Jones, Jamison Crowder, Sterling Shepard rounding it out. So, guys, we'll make sure that we post our teams out here on the socials. Let us know who drafted it the best, and we will be looking for your guys' input and your votes on that.